All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I don't want to take up too much of your time. We have a hopefully not very long presentation for y'all today, just kind of going over the main points of this year's NOFO, as well as the kind of application and rank and review process this year. We'll leave plenty of time for questions at the end and throughout. There's a lot of information on every slide. So I'll be pausing to give folks a chance to react or ask questions throughout. We also will be sending out a PowerPoint of these slides, as well as additional slides that have even more text on them. So we didn't think it would be helpful to show on your screens, but that you can have with you after this presentation. And then I know we just released the local application. So we will be holding a second Q&A session on Friday to give y'all a chance to go through all of those materials and come with any more specific questions you might have. That will be much more informal. There's no presentation. So if you don't have a specific question, you're not going to miss anything. It's just another opportunity to provide any clarity that folks might need. So for those who don't know me, my name is Maya Bait-Uri. I'm the Associate Director of, I always forget my title and I know I should memorize it before I present in front of people. Community Planning and Stress, something. Kiana's nodding, something like that. I am working closely on the local competition processes for both this NOFO as well as the special NOFO. So for those of you who are interested in applying for that one, see you again real soon. I'm also working closely with Leadership Council on all of the NOFO responsibilities on their end, again, for both NOFOs. Today, we're only focusing on the annual original 2022 COC NOFO. So if you have questions about the special NOFO, I'll ask that you hold those or email me or the NOFO email address at ECHO separately about the special NOFO. So one of the things that we'll get to that's a little unusual and different about this year's NOFO is that it has a very short timeline and HUD has not released a lot of information yet. So we have not gotten our estimated renewal demand for this year. We have not received detailed instructions or guidance on the application. And as of Sunday afternoon, when we checked, we have the applications have not been released in eSNAPs yet. So we're doing some kind of guesstimating, and I thought it would be better than nothing to share our award amounts from last year, at least to get a sense of what we can expect for this year. But again, these are from 2021. These are not 2022 numbers. We will communicate those out as soon as we get them from HUD, which we are hoping will happen very soon. So again, the timeline this year is a little insane. The collaborative applications are due to HUD on September 30th. That gives us a very, very tight timeline for all the things we have to do between now and then. So the local competition was released yesterday. As I mentioned, we'll be having another Q&A on the 12th. It's here twice, so you don't forget, in the morning. And applications will be due August 31st, which is the very last day they can be due by HUD deadlines. We will then, ECHO staff will review applications for threshold and project quality. Then all applications who pass those criteria will be moved on to the IRT for scoring. Once IRT scores, then they will move on to ranking. So there's a couple opportunities there for applicants to receive their applications back for corrections. The first one will be on September 2nd. So that is after the threshold and project quality reviews by ECHO staff. So we will have a small and mighty team doing those reviews as fast as possible, again, to give y'all as much time as we can given this tight timeline. So you will have from the 2nd to the 5th, so just a couple days there to return any corrections on deficiencies in the applications. After that, as I mentioned, IRT will receive the applications and score them. They will also just have a few days. And then ECHO staff will take those scores and create multiple options for project rankings for Leadership Council review. Leadership Council will ultimately approve a priority listing based on the different options for ranking presented by ECHO staff. That project ranking will be a draft pending appeals that will be posted on September 12th. We will also notify all applicants directly that the draft priority listing has been released. Applicants will then have an opportunity to review their project's placement on the rankings and appeal if they would like. You'll have 4 days to do so. So appeals will be due on the 16th, and then Leadership Council will rule on the appeals on the 21st. This spacing here is really to give Leadership Council enough time to review both the appeal and the application that the appeal is based on and make kind of a thorough, informed decision. ECHO will hopefully submit the collaborative application on the 28th. We've given ourselves a bit of buffer time here. As I mentioned, the application is officially due to HUD on the 30th, but just in case of emergency, we wanted to give ourselves a bit of buffer time there. Are there any questions on timeline before I move on? Okay. So I went through this a little bit through the timeline, but I did just want to be really clear about what the ranking process looks like, because there's a number of different players involved. So the applications will be reviewed and scored by the IRT. That's the independent review team. There will not be any ECHO staff members on the IRT. That is, as its name suggests, an independent group of community members, including one person from Leadership Council and people with lived experience of our system as well. Before it goes to IRT, ECHO does review all applications for threshold and project quality. And then after IRT scores the applications, ECHO provides the project ranking. So that is tier 1 and tier 2, according to both first and foremost, HUD's definitions and criteria for tier 1 and tier 2, as well as our review scoring and ranking policy. Leadership Council will then look at the different ranking options and approve a final priority listing, which applicants can appeal. And then pending decisions on appeals, the priority listing is finalized and approved by Leadership Council, and it is attached. It is one of the components of our collaborative application to HUD. Okay, so changes from last year. I've already spoken to the timeline. That is a very significant change. We have less than 8 weeks total for this whole NOFO from drop to submission. That is significantly less time than we are used to. NOFOs, I think we can all attest from various parts of the NOFO processes we've been a part of are always stressful, always feel tight. This year, it's especially so. The other big difference is grant terms. So HUD is allowing new projects to allow for multiple year grant terms, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or 15 years. That is true for new projects, but not expansion. So expansions can only apply for 1 year grant terms. Renewal permanent housing projects, specifically that receive project-based rental assistance or operating costs, may request up to 15 years. That is, well, can apply for up to 15-year grant term, but only 1 year of funding. So our interpretation of that is that the funding gets recalculated every year, probably based on FMR. HUD has not been clear. Again, guidance has not been released yet on this NOFO. COC planning can only apply for 1 year grant terms. The second big change is on the joint transitional and rapid component. There is now no set distinction between how much of the award needs to be used for each component. So it can be used in its entirety for either. So you can apply for a joint component and really just run a rapid program. That is a shift from last year. And then the other big change, which will impact y'all a little bit less, but you may see kind of show up in the allocation of points in the scoring guides for the local applications, are places in the collaborative application that HUD has increased points on. So that is specifically strategies to decrease racial disparities, to better serve LGBTQ plus clients and services, and inclusion of people with lived experience of homelessness in decision-making and governance activities. Any questions on these changes before I move on? Echo team, did I miss anything? Is there anything you'd like to add? Okay. So we're going to dive into new projects first. New projects can be created from multiple different funding sources. So it can be funding can be reallocated through from existing programs. It can be COC bonus or DV bonus. So for new projects created through reallocation or COC bonus, those can include any of the permanent housing component types, so permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, or joint transitional housing and rapid rehousing. Dedicated HMIS and supportive services only coordinated entry project components. These are all kind of anyways, new projects created through DV bonus include all of the permanent housing component types and supportive services only. So HMIS cannot qualify for DV bonus. So in terms of eligibility, new permanent housing projects must either serve persons eligible through dedicated plus or those who are defined as experiencing chronic homelessness. So chronic homelessness is defined as, sorry about that, as at least 1 year of homelessness and a identified disability. Dedicated plus is basically a type of PSH program that is dedicated to people with disabilities or families that have at least one adult or child with a disability and who are chronically homeless at the time of enrollment. So that is for permanent supportive housing, for rapid rehousing and joint, as well as the coordinated entry SSO. So that's supportive services only. Clients receiving services must be either category 1, category 2, or category 4 under HUD definitions. So category 1 is the one I think we're all most familiar with. That is literal homelessness. Category 2 is imminent risk of homelessness. So that is without intervention will be homeless within 14 days. And then category 4 is fleeing or attempting to flee a domestic violence situation. For new DV bonus, not surprisingly, the client must fall into category 4. So again, fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. For expansion projects, so as a reminder, an expansion falls under the category of a new project, but it's when an existing grantee is applying to expand a renewal project. So the project isn't new, but it is growing. And so it falls under the category of a new project under this NOFO. Specifically, it has to be within the same component type as the renewal project. And it has to increase the number of units, persons served, and services to the existing program, to the renewal project, and or add additional activities into HMIS. So it can't, if it's a rapid rehousing project, it has to stay a rapid rehousing project. It cannot be an expansion to a permanent supportive housing project, but the expansion must include additional people served or services provided. Expansion applications, as I mentioned, are only able to apply for a 1-year grant term. And importantly, because it is an expansion of an existing project, you do have to submit 2 separate applications. So that is a renewal application as well as an expansion application, again, because it is considered a new project. The expansion part is scored and ranked like a new project, so it is competitively ranked. The renewal portion or the separate application that is the renewal is ranked as a renewal, which is non-competitively above competitively ranked projects. Does that make sense? Are there any questions? Okay, and just to hit on the last bullet point here, any COC program that is currently on a performance improvement plan is ineligible to apply for an expansion project. Yeah, go ahead.
Kaylee, do you feel uncomfortable unmuting?
You can write in the chat as well if you'd prefer.
Sorry, I was having technical issues. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was reading, I think it was on maybe the rank and review. I think it was, if I'll look in a second to look at what exact form I was looking at, but it said I think I read that for the bonus or like new expansion, that you couldn't apply if you had any subpopulations.
So it's not that you can't apply, but the community funding priorities are specifically for those who do not have target subpopulations in their eligibility criteria.
Okay. So like substance use or mental health diagnosis would count as a subpopulation.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But there are no limitations on who can apply. It's that is just one of the funding
It won't be prioritized. Got it.
Correct. All right, so transition projects, which also qualify as new projects. So again, will be competitively ranked against other competitively ranked projects. So this is the process by which an existing project has been reallocated away from to the point has been fully reallocated. So the project ceases to exist and it is transitioned, or the project continues to exist. The organization no longer holds it and it is moved to a different applicant. So it is a way of keeping a project intact by transitioning it to a different provider. So for transition projects, no more than 50% of the grant may be used for costs of eligible activities of the original program component. They are then eligible for renewal for the next NOFO and beyond. So any agency that takes on a transition project in this fiscal year will be able to renew it next year non-competitively. Only current HUD grantees can accept transition projects. And so that means that you must be currently funded through HUD, not necessarily through the COC program, but you must be a current HUD grantee in order to accept a transition project in this year's NOFO. And the transition project will have the same operating year as the original project. So the contract terms will stay consistent. Kiana or Rachel, do you have anything to add before I move on?
No, ma'am, doing well.
Okay. Awesome. All right, so now we're going to move on to the application process. Eligible organizations are nonprofits, state and local governments, public housing authorities. For-profit entities are not eligible to either apply for grants or to be subrecipients on any COC grants. And all applicants must ensure that their organization has a code of conduct that complies with HUD's COC program rules. So if your organization's code of conduct does not appear on HUD's website, you must attach a code of conduct in your application on eSnaps to ensure that it's consistent. All right, so this is speaking to Kaylee's question. So Leadership Council has approved our community funding priorities for 2022. This is specifically for new and bonus and expansion and transition projects. Because renewal projects are, I mean, I guess it's true for everyone, but renewal projects are non-competitively ranked, so it's less relevant there. The specific component types that are being prioritized for funding this year are permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, HMIS, and coordinated entry. HMIS and coordinated entry being recognized as kind of components of the infrastructure that kind of fall into a separate category than housing. The populations that are being prioritized are, this is kind of a confusing way to say it, are none. Specifically projects that do not target subpopulations in their eligibility criteria. So that is different from having services that are targeted towards specific clients' needs. This is really looking at eligibility criteria. So do clients need to fall into a specific subgroup to be eligible for a referral into your program? Obviously, eligibility that is required by HUD, such as clients falling into Category 1 or Category 4, does not count as a subpopulation. That is a requirement of the funding. There are 5 additional community funding priorities aside from the component types and population. So those are furthering racial equity, authentic engagement of people with lived expertise, using data to inform program design and growth, retaining a competitive workforce, and demonstrating fiscal responsibility and grant management. So those of y'all who are current COC providers may remember Leadership Council requested spend down reports. This is kind of part of these new priorities and hopes to kind of center these as values guiding our COC programs. So the ranking policy, this is part of the review, scoring, and ranking policies and procedures. As I mentioned, all projects do have to pass threshold and project quality review. They will then be scored by the IRT. New projects will be competitively ranked against renewal projects that have a score of 64.9 and below. This is different from last year. That scorecard score is calculated by averaging the previous 4 quarters. So in previous years, we only looked at Q1 scorecards. We are now looking at the previous 4 quarters, the average of those 4 quarters. If it falls below 64.9%, a renewal project will be competitively ranked alongside new projects. For renewal projects that have an average scorecard score from the previous 4 quarters that falls above 65%, they will be non-competitively ranked above new projects. Projects that are eligible for first-time renewal, meaning they were new or transition or expansion last year, will be non-competitively ranked above competitively ranked projects this year. And then HMIS renewal will also be non-competitively ranked above all other renewals. So at the top of tier 1, again, kind of recognizing that HMIS is a component of the infrastructure and is not in the same category as housing programs. So it will go to the top of tier 1, and other renewal projects will be non-competitively ranked just below HMIS. and above new projects. So as I mentioned, once ranking is completed and approved by Leadership Council, applicants will be notified of the draft rankings. That is our draft priority listing, and we'll have the opportunity to submit appeals. Those appeals will be heard by Leadership Council, not by ECHO. There are kind of certain guidelines for what constitutes an eligible appeal. So that includes not getting funding or getting less funding than was applied for or that was noted in the application. Any renewal projects that are ranked in tier 2 of the application. Tier 2 is not guaranteed funding as high of a guarantee as tier 1, and so that constitutes grounds for an appeal. Any projects that fall into the bottom of tier 1, which would essentially put them in the same position as tier 2 in terms of chances of getting funded, can also have grounds for an appeal. And then any projects that are deemed to have an incurable deficiency that could not be resolved in the earlier phase prior to scoring. So again, ECHO will hold threshold and project quality reviews. Any curable deficiencies that are noted will be returned to applicants to be able to correct. Any incurable deficiencies, again, as it sounds, will not be returned to applicants. And so this is the opportunity to appeal that here at the end of the process. So I will reiterate again, this timeline is insane. Applicants will be notified on the 12th that the priority listing has been tentatively approved. The draft has been approved by Leadership Council. Y'all will have 4 days until the 16th to submit any appeals to Leadership Council, and then Leadership Council will rule on those appeals on the 21st. This is in part, again, because of HUD imposed deadlines. So we are required to post the priority listing and notify applicants by the 15th. We tried to bump that up to give applicants more time to submit appeals if they would like. So that's it. There's a ton of resources. And as I mentioned, a lot more slides with more specific information on program component types and different steps of the process that we will share out with clickable links so that y'all can do your deep dives if you would like. And again, as I mentioned, we will be holding a Q&A session on Friday at 10 a.m. The Zoom link is on the ECHO website on the 2022 COC NOFO page, and I will be sending out a reminder email about that as well. Kiana, go ahead.
So thank you, Maya. 2 things that I want to make sure I say out loud. This timeline is insane. We feel it. We know that you guys will feel it too. We also know that IRT and Leadership Council will feel it. So we can commiserate at the end. As soon as HUD releases the detailed instructions or any insights around eSNAPs, we will make sure you guys get that information. And then the last thing that I wanted to share is that there is a webinar related to the regular COC NOFO on this Thursday. If you have not gotten that, bye Jason, yes. If you have not gotten that information, please let me know and I can forward you that email. That's all I got. Thank you, Maya.
Thanks, Kiana. Yes, it was on my list to speak to the Thursday webinar. So thank you. That's a webinar HUD is hosting. That's not an ECHO thing. Are there any questions? I know we just went through a lot. Yes, Dylan.
Hello. Do you know, are you allowed to say if ECHO intends to apply for HMIS expansion this cycle?
I don't know, to be totally honest. We, again, because of this insane timeline, did not release an intent to apply this year. And so we don't know who intends to apply, including Echo HMIS. So we have kind of an awkward situation with Echo being an applicant and the collaborative applicant. And so we kind of put up a firewall once the NOFO is released, and
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, now I'm thinking through it. The fact that you don't know is probably the right thing.
So it was a trick question.
Next question. I noticed that you estimated tier 2 funding to be bigger than tier 1 funding. Could you say something about that?
So again, that was from last year. HUD did change the calculation for tier 1 and tier 2 for this year. I believe tier 1 is 95%, as opposed to last year. But again, they haven't released any of our estimated award amounts. And so that was our best estimate from last year.
Right on. So maybe I missed something from last year. Why was there so much money in tier 2 last year as opposed to tier 1?
Kiana, do you remember? Is that something you can speak to?
I should remember, and I don't.
They did 2 years of DV because they had 2020 and 2021 all in that year. Plus they were doing the 100% as opposed to the 95 that Maya pointed out. Plus we also had like YHGP stuff. That was like weird.
Okay. So
I will say for this year, they are again combining YHTP renewal and the NOFO, and there is also a pretty hefty DV bonus. So we may see something kind of wonky like that again this year.
Gotcha. Understood. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I see in the chat, yes, the PowerPoint will be available after this. I will send it out in PDF form with clickable links to all the resources. There'll also be additional slides in there that I hid from this presentation just because it was like an essay of text in a slide that no one wants to look at, but it'll have a lot more detail in that as well. And I will send that out to the community at large. So even folks who weren't able to attend today will be able to see it. I did also want to speak a little bit to IRT recruiting just while I have y'all here. So I will be sending out an interest form later today to recruit folks for the IRT. Any of y'all in here and any of your coworkers are ineligible to sit on the IRT due to conflicts of interest. So any agency that intends, any employee or board member of an agency that intends to apply cannot sit on the independent review team. We are recruiting for a larger team this year than we did last year. We are aiming for around 16 members. This is in part, again, to build a bit of a buffer in case life happens, but also because of the ridiculously short timeline we have this year. We are hoping to recruit more IRT members rather than assigning more IRT members to assign less applications rather than having folks responsible for the typical 5 to 6 applications in about 3.5 days, which is kind of all we got this year. Any other questions? I'm going to put the NOFO email address in the chat. Please reach out there with any questions. It'll probably still be me answering the questions, but it's a way for us to keep better track of the questions we're getting in. If we continue to get if we start to notice patterns in the questions that we're getting, we'll be able to kind of communicate more broadly around anything that is unclear. So please send all your questions to that email address. Should be easy to remember, nofo@austinecho.org. I won't keep y'all longer than you need to be here. Thank you very much for joining us. Yeah, Kiana, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Maya. I just really want to plug the question and answer sessions. Last year, we got some feedback that the office hours were really helpful. And it's really an opportunity for ECHO staff for us to be available to answer any questions that you have once you're really digging in the meat and potatoes of the local competition. And the hope is by the time we get together on Friday for our question and answer session, we would have gotten a little bit more guidance from HUD. So I just wanted to go ahead and plug that opportunity. And again, as we get information, we will make sure that we pass that on to you guys.
All right. Have a great afternoon, everyone. I'm going to stay on for a couple more minutes in case anyone has stage fright and has a question.